Good afternoon, everybody. It's Wednesday before Memorial Day weekend. I'm just showing this very faded art piece that my husband found in a thrift store of the American flag to set us up for a patriotic reading of a poem. So I just wanted to show that sampler because he likes to collect those things, David Conniff, my husband, and it's been in the house for ages. And we keep thinking about how wonderful it would be to restore it because it obviously got terribly sun damaged, but neither of us know how to start doing that. But can you imagine how glorious it probably was when it was first finished and how proud the artist was when they completed it? I brought along Liberty Teddy to listen today. Liberty Teddy got his name when he came to Washington, D.C. with me last year. I thought it would be nice to take something with the American flag on it as I toured Washington, D.C. for the first time and went to all the monuments and museums and had a great time. And didn't feel like calling him Patriotic Teddy, but Liberty Teddy seemed to work just fine. Anyway, so I'm here to read a poem today, as I said, called The Blue and the Grey by Francis Miles Finch. I'm going to talk a little bit about him and where the poem came from and why I decided to read it at the end, if you would like to stay tuned. But I hope you like to listen to the poem because it really is quite magnificent. The Blue and the Grey by Francis Miles Finch. By the flow of the inland river, whence the fleets of iron have fled, where the blades of the grave grass quiver, asleep are the ranks of the dead. Under the sod and the dew, waiting the judgment day, under the one the blue, under the other the grey. These in the robings of glory, those in the gloom of defeat, all with the battle blood gory, in the dusk of eternity meet. Under the sod and the dew, waiting the judgment day, under the laurel the blue, under the willow the grey. From the silence of sorrowful hours the desolate mourners go, lovingly laden with flowers, alike for the friend and the foe. Under the sod and the dew, waiting the judgment day, under the roses the blue, under the lilies the grey. So with an equal splendour the morning sunrays fall, with a touch impartially tender on the blossoms blooming for all. Under the sod and the dew, waiting the judgment day, broidered with gold the blue, mellowed with gold the grey. So when the summer calleth on forest and field of grain, with an equal murmur falleth the cooling drip of the rain. Under the sod and the dew, waiting the judgment day, wet with the rain the blue, wet with the rain the grey. Sadly, but not with upbraiding, the generous deed was done. In the storm of the years that are fading, no braver battle was won. Under the sod and the dew, waiting the judgment day, under the blossoms the blue, under the garlands the grey. No more shall the war cry sever or the winding rivers be red. They banish our anger forever when they laurel the graves of our dead. Under the sod and the dew, waiting the judgment day, love and tears for the blue, tears and love for the grey. So I'd never heard of the poem. I'll tell you where I went for it. So it's getting to be Memorial Day, and I was trying to think of something to read for my 4th and 5th graders to remind them about the history of Memorial Day, because I think a lot of us forget that it actually started a long time ago. And so I wanted to find a few facts to tell them, because all my books are at school and I kind of forget some of the important pieces. So I went online and here's what I found. So I was looking for a reminder of facts and dates about Memorial Day. I came across a perfect snapshot on the children's section of the website for the Library of Congress. Memorial Day, originally Decoration Day, when people, mostly women, would strew flowers on the graves of those who died for their country during the Civil War. It was first celebrated on May 30th, 1868. In 1971, federal law made it the last Monday of May and extended it to honour all those who died in American wars. This article on the Library of Congress website also made mention of a poem entitled The Blue and the Grey by Francis Miles Finch. I had not heard of the poem before, so Googled it to read. I was immediately overwhelmed by it and wanted to share it with as many people as possible who also may have been unfamiliar with it. So I decided to record it here on YouTube. Francis Miles Finch was inspired to write it after observing a Women's Memorial Association in Mississippi place flowers on the graves of both Confederate, grey, and Union, blue, soldiers in 1866. The poem memorialises somewhat the casualties on both sides of the war, whilst also challenging the pointlessness of war itself. I wanted to remind my students that Memorial Day is deep-rooted in American history and is about more than endless mattress sales, deals for new cars, barbecues and beach outings that signal the start of summer. Sacrifice seems more important than ever to acknowledge and appreciate as we enter our 10th week of at-home remote learning. I hope you were moved by the poem as I was. I also wanted to look a bit more in my... Oh, here we go. Sorry if that made anybody dizzy. Look up a little bit more in my ancient New Book of Knowledge encyclopedia that I have at my house that was retired from my previous school. This is the volume C, which tells us about the Civil War. And there are two little snippets that have a picture of the flag of each side on the corners, if you can see. Oops, get it right here. Confederate soldiers in the Civil War had grey uniforms, while Union soldiers wore dark blue. The two armies were sometimes referred to as the blue and the grey. The Confederates were not always well equipped. Shoes and uniforms were often taken from the dead. Union soldiers were generally better clothed and armed than their Confederate counterparts. Unlike Johnny Reb, Billy Yank usually had a tent to sleep in, enough food, sturdy shoes, an official uniform, his own rifle, and plenty of ammunition. So those were a couple more snippets that explained a little bit of a snapshot. Then I remembered that I also had this book downstairs in my bookshelf, Blue Sky, White Stars, by Sarvinder Neighbourhouse, illustrated by Kadir Nelson. This is also a poem written a little over 150 years after the one that was written by our previous poet. And it's very simple and short, but it has some beautiful illustrations. It's been signed by Kadir Nelson because I met him at an ALA Librarians event in, I think it was Chicago when I got this one. Blue sky, white stars. Blue sky, white stars. Red rose, red rose. White rose, white rose. Red, white, and blue. Old glory, old glory. Sea waves, sea waves. So together, one nation. So together, one nation. Well worn, well worn. Woven together, woven together. All American. All American. These are my favorite illustrations. Stand proud. Stand proud. Rising up. Rising up. Fly high. Fly high. Freedom. Red, white, blue sky, white stars, forever. And there's that very delicious short poem that was illustrated by Kadir Nelson, written by Sarvinder Neighbourhouse, that talks about the pride of the flag. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that poem as much as I did, researching it a little bit and reading it, and look forward to talking to people soon. Happy Memorial Day 2020, people. Be safe.